Right, now we need to start populating this general painting that we've done in the first two videos. So we're going to put some trees in, so I'm just going to cover that for a minute, and I'm going to use this piece of scrap paper to demonstrate. Now normally we'd tape it down, but this is just a demonstration, so we're not going to bother with that for the moment. So all I've done, just to try and show you how to do it, is I've drawn the basic shape of a tree, with just the beginning of a couple of branches. We're not going to get into too much detail here. The one I'm going to put in my painting will be a smaller version of this, but this is a general lesson, if you like, on how to do it. So if you have got some idea where your light source is coming from in your painting, which might seem obvious but obviously isn't when you've got a general landscape, you choose where you're going to have your dark side of this three-dimensional object. And I've mixed up some dark brown, and I'm just going to put it down the side of this tree, fairly strong. It's a mix of burnt sienna and Payne's grey that I've used. Now before it dries, I clean my brush and just use, well, I've got dirty water here, but it doesn't really matter, and I pull the paint across into the middle of the tree. And if I leave little white patches, I'm not going to fill them in, I'm just going to let them stay there. Okay. Now the best thing is not to do too much of a tree at any one time, because to cope with it you need to get one bit done before it dries, before you move on. So now I've wet my brush again, and this time I do the same for the final third. Pull the paint across. I'm not going right into the old paint. It's almost like just dirty water. Okay, now I can go back and start again on another part of the tree, for instance over here, and do the same. So I take up my dark line, and if it starts to bleed into this, that's good. You know, it's all part of this natural feel. Clean my brush, pull it across. Again, if you get these little white areas, leave them. It's very tempting to fill them in, but it tends to sort of deaden the picture a little bit if you do. So when you've done that, you can go back in if you like and just darken the whole areas that you want to, you know, create the feeling of knots and crevices in your tree. While the picture's still wet, that's fine. It will dry fairly quickly, so you need to not hang about, if you like, when you're doing it, you know, and not over fuss. Sometimes it's easy to over fuss. Then, obviously, off of these, you're going to get smaller branches, which you can take off. And again, wet your brush. Now we're coming down very small, so you're probably not going to get away with 3 levels, 1, 2, 3. You're only going to get away with maybe 2. So I think it'd be quite nice if we bring the camera in close for a minute, just to have a look at this in more detail, and see if you can pick up with the camera the marks that I'm making, to create the feeling that you're looking at an old trunk of a tree. When people paint trees, they often get a bit panicky, and they tend to have a thick bole of the tree. Then they come off like fingers, and then fingers off of fingers, you know. And sometimes you do get trees like that, but it tends to be very artificial. So you need, if you're doing that, to come off at different places and different heights, you know. And don't be scared to just go across, cut across what you've already painted. You don't want it to go from thick, medium, thin quickly. It's got to do it almost imperceptibly, so that you get a natural feel to it, you know. So you need to judge on your paper just how high your tree is going to be when you're doing it. and you come across and you come down as well. You can come down this way. If you have a problem, you know, if I'm right-handed and sometimes I have a problem trying to go that way, so there's no reason why you can't turn your paper round, your board round, and come off again. And you need to practice going as fine as you can with your brush. You might even change your brush and use something which is hardly any hairs on it, in which case you can get right down to very, very fine lines. And keep going while there's paint in your brush. Keep going, because as they get paler and paler, you will give the appearance that the branches are going out the back of the tree. They're not all just going sideways or up or down, and very much fainter. So until you run out of paint, don't keep recharging. So that's it. Once it's dry, if you've got some little knots you can paint into these trees, you can keep going with this as far as you want. Now this is a generic tree. This isn't a specific tree. To do different types of trees, you would approach it slightly differently, but the general rule that you're going from dark, medium to light is a good one, because it gives a good feeling of 3 dimensions, which is what you're hoping will look good on your painting. We're going to apply a tree to this watercolour, and or perhaps a couple of trees. Now what you've done is cover the whole of the painting, so what happens to your white bits that you've been doing in your you've been leaving in your trial one, if you like. So what you can do with this, there's 2 things. One, you can use rubber solution from the start. Now rubber solution is a foul smelling liquid that's usually yellow or blue, and you can buy it in bottles, and you paint it on initially before you do any painting, and it will ruin your good brushes, so don't use good brushes. Buy some cheap brushes to use, and just paint the basic tree. Now you don't paint all the fine branches, it'll just drive you mad, take too long. Just the main stems, or if you're doing a building, the main area of the building, and that will protect the paper until a time when, like for instance now, you could rub it off and you'd have a nice white stem. Okay, now I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do it by taking out a bit of this colour, not in this video but in the next video, to keep you on tenterhooks, in other words. So if you're going to do a bit of practice between this video and the next video, then have a go on some paper doing something like this with the trees. Get your hand into it, get the feel of the tree. Okay, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.